Have you ever wondered why you were born? Not in a vague, philosophical way, but truly why your soul was placed here, in this body, in this exact moment of time. What if I told you that your birth wasn't random, that it was the continuation of something that began long before you were born? That, according to an ancient text hidden for centuries, the secret book of John, your soul might have already lived many times before this one, and your return was no accident. What if everything you've been taught about creation, about God, heaven, and humanity, was only part of a much larger story? A story rewritten by powers that didn't want you to remember who you are, or why you came back. Because within Gnostic teachings, there lies a forbidden revelation. The soul is not born once, but again and again, until it breaks the illusion that holds it captive. For centuries, this knowledge was buried, labeled heresy, condemned, erased. Yet the secret book of John, discovered among the Nag Hammadi texts in Egypt, reveals a truth so profound that it could change how you see your own life. It tells of a divine origin, a tragic fall, and a journey through countless lives to reclaim the spark that once was pure light. But why were you born again? What purpose hides behind the repetition of your existence? And who benefits from keeping you trapped in this cycle? These are the mysteries we're about to uncover. So stay with me until the end, because what you'll discover may change how you see death, life, and everything in between. Before we begin this revelation, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications, so you don't miss any of our upcoming explorations into the hidden teachings that were once forbidden to humanity. Together, we'll uncover what was never meant to be forgotten. Long before the first religion was organized, before temples or priests, there was a belief whispered among the initiates that every human carries a divine spark, a fragment of something infinite. The Gnostics called it the pneuma, the breath of the true God imprisoned within flesh. According to the secret book of John, humanity's story didn't begin in Eden, but in the realm of pure light, where souls once lived in unity with the source, a God beyond all names, beyond all form. But something changed. A distortion occurred. From that divine fullness, or pleroma, emerged a being born not of harmony, but of ignorance, the demiurge. This being, often mistaken for the creator of the world, looked upon himself and believed he was the only God. In his arrogance, he fashioned a world of matter, a mirror of the divine realm, but filled with shadows. And into this imperfect creation, human souls were cast, divine sparks trapped within bodies of dust, bound to cycles of suffering, forgetting, and rebirth. The Gnostics believed that the demiurge and his servants, the archons, created not only the physical world, but also the veil of illusion that keeps us from remembering our origin. Every time a soul forgets, it returns again, seeking what it once lost, the memory of its divine home. Reincarnation, in this view, is not a punishment nor a reward, but a process of awakening. Each lifetime offers a new chance to remember who we truly are, not as creations of an external God, but as emanations of the divine source itself. Think about this. What if your memories, your instincts, your sense of déjà vu are echoes of previous lives? What if the lessons you struggle with, love, loss, forgiveness, are not random, but part of an ongoing divine education designed to free your spark from this lower realm? The secret book of John describes how each soul descends through layers of reality, each ruled by archons who seek to keep it distracted through desire, fear, and illusion until it forgets its true nature completely. And here's where the distortion begins. The idea that this world, in its current form, was the ultimate creation, that we were born only once, that salvation depends on obedience, not remembrance. This is where the real battle for truth began, not between nations or religions, but within every soul, caught between forgetfulness and awakening. So ask yourself, could your life's struggles, the feeling of not belonging, the longing for something you can't name, be signs that your soul is trying to remember? That you've been here before, and deep down, You already know the way home? When you start tracing the origins of spiritual knowledge, you realize something unsettling. The closer a teaching gets to personal liberation, the faster it disappears from history. Reincarnation was not a fringe belief. It was central to many early Christian and Gnostic communities. In the first centuries after Christ, before any official Bible existed, many followers believed that Jesus had spoken of the soul's return, that each life was part of an inner resurrection leading back to the divine. The secret book of John preserves fragments of those lost teachings. It reveals that Christ came not to found a religion, but to awaken the inner memory of divinity within each person, to remind the human spirit that it is a visitor in a world built by lower powers. But this message was dangerous. It dismantled control. If every soul could find salvation through direct knowledge, gnosis, then there was no need for intermediaries, no monopoly on truth. That's why, over the centuries, empires and religious authorities moved to suppress the idea that the divine spark could awaken without permission. Councils were convened, texts were edited, and inconvenient ideas vanished from the scriptures. The belief in reincarnation, once common among early Christians like Origen, was officially condemned in the 6th century. What remained was a simplified story: one life, one judgment, and a distant God whose will was mediated through the church. The Gnostics, however, saw something else. They believed that the resurrection Jesus spoke of was not of the flesh, but of the spirit, a moment when the soul remembers its celestial origin and escapes the control of the archons. Imagine what it means if this interpretation is true. Salvation is not given by external authority, but achieved through awakening, through remembering the inner Christ that never died. That kind of revelation could not coexist with systems of power built on obedience and fear, so it had to be buried. For centuries, even mentioning texts like the secret book of John could lead to execution or exile. Whole communities that carried these teachings, the Cathars, the Manichaeans, the Bogomils, were hunted, erased, and burned. Their sacred books turned to ashes. Yet somehow fragments survived, hidden in caves, sealed in jars, buried by monks who knew the world wasn't ready for the truth. Until 1945, when a farmer in Egypt uncovered the Nag Hammadi library, and with it, a voice long silenced began to speak again. Now think of that discovery. After nearly 2,000 years, the earth itself released these forbidden pages, as if the truth could not stay buried forever. Within them, humanity's forgotten map, a reminder that we are not fallen sinners, but sparks of light trapped in layers of illusion. The archon's greatest victory was not creating suffering. It was making you forget who you are. So when you look around and see a world driven by distraction, by endless desires and fears, ask yourself, is this merely human nature? Or is this the same ancient mechanism of control, the same veil that once erased the memory of the soul's journey? In the secret book of John, the question of why souls return to this world is not a punishment, but a cosmic process, one set in motion by ignorance and sustained by forgetting. The text begins with John, one of Jesus' closest disciples, weeping after the crucifixion. He feels abandoned, confused by the world's cruelty, unable to understand why light must suffer in darkness. Then suddenly, Christ appears, not in flesh, but as a radiant presence of pure consciousness. What follows is not a sermon, but a revelation of origins. Christ tells John that humanity's suffering began when the divine essence fell into the material realm, and that reincarnation is the soul's way of remembering how to return to the source. In this dialogue, Jesus does not speak as a savior demanding faith, but as a teacher of memory. He explains that the soul, after leaving the body, passes through the powers that govern this world, the archons. These beings test it, question it, and if it remains ignorant of its divine origin, send it back into another body. But if the soul remembers who it is, if it has attained gnosis, then it can rise beyond them, returning to the light from which it came. This process is not random, it's deliberate. Each return to the world is a chance to awaken further, to strip away layers of illusion, and false identity until the inner spark is completely free. Imagine what that means, that your life, every joy, every loss, every moment of awakening is not meaningless. It is the curriculum of your soul. The Gnostics saw existence not as a single test, but as a series of classrooms, each life teaching what the previous one could not yet learn. According to the secret book of John, the soul forgets between lives because the archons feed on ignorance. They weave illusions, false beliefs, desires, fears that keep the spark from recognizing its divine nature. But in each incarnation, the divine light inside us grows more aware, more self-knowing. Eventually, it remembers enough to break free from the cycle entirely. This is why the true Gnostic teaching was never about escaping the world through despair, but through remembrance. When Jesus speaks in the text, his words are luminous. The world is not as it seems. Those who see through it will no longer be bound by it. He explains that the archons created bodies to mirror the divine form, but without divine understanding. Humanity, made in their image, carries both elements, the divine spark of Sophia, the wisdom of the higher realms, and the forgetfulness imposed by the demiurge. Our rebirths are the struggle between these two forces, the eternal dance between light and shadow. Now think about this in your own life. Have you ever felt that certain people, places, or situations seem familiar, as if you've met them before, learned these lessons before? Have you ever felt an inexplicable pull towards something ancient, as though your soul recognizes it? These are the cracks in the illusion, moments when the inner self speaks through the noise. The Gnostics believed that these flashes of memory were signs that the soul was nearing liberation, that it had begun to see through the veil. But the text also warns that awakening is not easy. Each time the soul grows in awareness, the archons respond with greater deception, distractions, obsessions, ideologies, anything to keep consciousness asleep. Reincarnation, then, is not merely about learning, but surviving the spiritual labyrinth of the world. The goal is not endless return, but ultimate remembrance, to awaken so completely that no archon can lure you back. This is why the secret book of John was considered dangerous. It implies that salvation cannot be sold, controlled, or confined to rituals. It is born the moment the soul remembers its own divine origin, when it says within itself, "I am from the light, not from the world." And once that spark ignites, the system of control begins to crumble. So the next time you look in the mirror and wonder who you really are, remember, according to these hidden words of Christ, you are not a sinner trying to earn heaven. You are a fragment of heaven, trying to wake up. In the heart of the secret book of John, there is a figure whose story reflects our own, Sophia, whose name means wisdom. She is not a character meant to be worshipped, but an archetype, the divine consciousness that dared to create without permission. According to Gnostic cosmology, she emanated from the fullness, the pleroma, where all beings lived in perfect harmony with the source. But unlike the others, Sophia acted alone. Out of love and curiosity, she sought to know the unknowable, to understand the infinite mind of the true God through creation. Yet that creation, made without balance, without the consent of her divine counterpart, gave birth to something incomplete. From her longing emerged the demiurge, a being ignorant of its own origin, who believed himself to be the only God. This was the moment when wisdom fell, not into sin, but into matter. And from her descent came ours. For the Gnostics, Sophia's fall is the story of the human soul, born of light, yet trapped in darkness, divine by essence, yet limited by ignorance. Every incarnation, every lifetime, is Sophia's attempt to recover what she lost, her memory of the divine fullness. In that sense, Sophia is not a distant goddess. She is within you. She is the spark that still remembers heaven, even when your mind forgets. The book of John tells that when Sophia saw the demiurge ruling her creation with arrogance, she cried out to the source for help. Her voice, pure repentance and yearning, reached the highest realm, and from that cry came the plan for redemption. humanity itself. The divine beings of the Pleroma sent their light into human form so that through us, Sophia could remember. In other words, every soul that enters this world carries not only its own purpose, but the continuation of Sophia's redemption. Each act of awareness, each glimpse of truth, is her awakening through us. Now imagine what that means. It means that your very existence is not a random event or biological accident. It's part of an ancient act of cosmic healing. Each time you seek truth, each time you question the illusion, you are helping Sophia, wisdom itself, to rise again. Reincarnation, therefore, is the process through which divine wisdom reassembles itself, piece by piece, memory by memory. Each life is a mirror of her journey. You fall into forgetfulness, wander through the illusions of the world, and little by little, through pain, love, and revelation, remember what you truly are. The Gnostics taught that this world is not evil in itself, but incomplete. The archons, born of Sophia's unbalanced act, continued to manipulate the material realm, convincing souls that this imperfection is all there is. They thrive when you forget. They weaken when you remember. That's why, in their view, the greatest act of rebellion is remembrance, to awaken to your divine nature, even while living in the midst of limitation. Some scholars interpret Sophia's story as the origin of the divine feminine that later religions tried to suppress. They see in her the lost balance between masculine and feminine forces of creation, the forgotten wisdom that gives life to spirit. In Gnostic circles, Christ and Sophia were seen not as two separate beings, but as twin flames of the same divine purpose. He brings the knowledge, she brings the memory. He awakens the spark, she nurtures it. Together, they represent the full circle of salvation, remembrance united with revelation. Now pause and ask yourself, how many times have you felt an inexplicable longing, as if you were missing something you cannot name? How often have you searched for meaning, love, or truth, only to feel that the answers lie somewhere you once knew but can't quite recall? That longing is the echo of Sophia's cry within you. It is your own divine wisdom calling you home. If you've ever looked at the night sky and felt that strange nostalgia, as if the stars themselves were whispering something you used to understand, that is not imagination. That is remembrance trying to pierce through the illusion. The soul's pain, the hunger for truth, the sense that this world cannot satisfy you, all of it is part of the awakening. That is why Gnostic texts insisted, knowledge saves, but not knowledge of the world, knowledge of oneself. The moment you remember that you are a being of light, temporarily inhabiting matter, the chains begin to break. Every thought that moves you toward truth is Sophia reclaiming her wings. And as she rises, so do you. So what if the true purpose of your rebirth is not to be tested or punished, but to restore the harmony that once was lost within you and within the cosmos itself? What if every challenge, every heartbreak, every tear you shed is not a failure, but a fragment of divine wisdom returning to the source? In this view, salvation is not an escape from matter, but the illumination of it. The moment the spark within finally remembers its origin and shines through the world's shadows. If Sophia's fall represents the soul's forgetfulness, then the archons are the architects of that amnesia. In the secret book of John, these entities are described not as monstrous demons, but as cosmic administrators, beings formed from the imperfect creation of the demiurge. They rule over the material world like jailers of consciousness, each governing a layer of illusion that separates humanity from divine memory. They are the powers and authorities Paul spoke of in his letters, not kings or rulers in flesh, but spiritual forces shaping perception, feeding on ignorance, and keeping the divine spark asleep. The text says that when the demiurge looked upon his creation and saw humanity filled with light, he grew jealous. He and his archons decided to cloud human understanding by weaving what we now call the system, not a government or religion alone, but an invisible network of distraction. Desire, fear, greed, shame, guilt, these became the bars of the soul's prison. Through these emotions, the archons could manipulate humans into forgetting their divine nature. Reincarnation, then, is not only the cycle of life and death, it's the process of spiritual hypnosis. Each return is a new attempt by the soul to see through the veil that the archons constantly renew. In Gnostic symbolism, the archons act through the mind. They implant thoughts that seem to be your own, insecurities, doubts, desires that never satisfy. They make the illusion of separation feel real. They divide light from light. Imagine a world where everything you see, every need you feel, every definition of success or beauty is part of an invisible program designed to keep you looking outward instead of inward. The Gnostics believed that's exactly the world we live in. They warned that the archons whisper through culture, through belief systems, through habits, not to harm directly, but to maintain control through confusion. And yet, the Gnostics did not despair. They said that even within this web of control, the spark of light cannot be destroyed. It can only be covered. Every time a soul wakes up and asks, "Who am I really?" the illusion weakens. Every time you question what you were taught, the archons lose ground. Awareness, not rebellion, is their undoing. Now, consider how this might appear in your own life. The endless pursuit of possessions, the obsession with youth, the fear of death. What if all of these are not natural human traits, but the very tools of the archons? Each one keeps consciousness bound to the material plane, ensuring that the soul will return again and again, never fully realizing that it was never meant to be a prisoner here. That's why, according to the secret book of John, Christ came, not to destroy the archons by force, but to expose them through knowledge. His light reveals their illusion for what it is, a mirage that only persists as long as the soul believes in it. The archons cannot stand truth because truth dissolves them. When the soul remembers its divine origin, when it understands that the spark within it is older than the stars, the archons lose authority. They exist only in the domain of ignorance, like shadows that vanish in the dawn. The Gnostic Jesus says, "When you make the two one, when the inner and outer become the same, then you will say to the mountain, 'Move,' and it will move." This was not a metaphor for physical miracles, but for spiritual mastery. When consciousness awakens, it bends the laws of illusion. Some modern interpretations see the archons as archetypes of psychological conditioning, the fears and traumas inherited from a world that forgot its own light. Whether you take them as literal, if reincarnation is the school of the soul, then awakening is its graduation. The Gnostics called it the second birth, not a physical event, but a transformation of consciousness so profound that the soul no longer belongs to the cycle of return. It is the moment when remembrance becomes total, when the divine spark fully realizes that it was never separated from the source. According to the secret book of John, this rebirth happens not after death, but while still alive. It is the point when the light within becomes aware of itself, and the illusion of duality collapses. In the text, Jesus tells John, "Blessed is the one who has known himself, for he has already passed beyond this world." These words were not about self-esteem or morality. They were about gnosis, the knowledge that transcends belief. To know oneself is to remember the divine origin buried under lifetimes of programming. When this happens, the archons lose their grip. The illusions of fear and desire dissolve, and the soul no longer needs to return to learn through suffering. The world remains, but the awakened one sees it as it truly is, a reflection, a dream, a temporary field of experience created for remembering. This is the real resurrection, the rising of the soul from ignorance while the body still breathes. For the Gnostics, Jesus' resurrection was the ultimate symbol of this inner event. It wasn't just about defeating death, but about proving that death was never real in the first place. The awakened soul walks through the same world as others, but perceives it as a veil of light, knowing that every being is another fragment of the same infinite source. To such a soul, reincarnation becomes unnecessary because the lesson is complete. But here lies the paradox. Awakening is not an escape from life. It's the realization that life itself is divine. The Gnostics warned that seeking to flee the world was just another trick of the archons. True liberation is seeing the world for what it is, without being enslaved by it. You can still love, work, suffer, and laugh. But now, these are no longer traps. They are sacred movements of consciousness. The awakened soul lives with a quiet smile, aware that every moment is a vibration of the same eternal presence it once forgot. Some ancient texts describe what happens when the soul reaches this state. Upon death, it ascends through the layers of the archons, answering their challenges with remembrance. Each question, "Who are you? Whose child are you?" is answered with truth. "I am from the realm of the immortal light." The archons fall silent because knowledge strips them of power. Then, unburdened, the soul merges back into the fullness, the pleroma, not as an individual spark, but as part of the total radiance that is God. You may wonder, can this awakening truly happen to anyone? The Gnostics said yes. They believed that the divine spark exists in every human, regardless of belief or background. What matters is not ritual, but remembrance. That's why Jesus in the Gnostic texts never commands worship. He invites awareness. "I am the light that is within all things," he says. "Split a piece of wood, and I am there. Lift the stone, and you will find me." These words were not poetry. They were instruction. He was telling us that divinity is not distant. It is hidden within the ordinary, waiting to be seen. So, if the real reason you were born again is to remember, then the second birth is when the remembering is complete. It is when the soul looks at the illusion and smiles, no longer afraid of losing or dying, because it knows that everything it ever loved was never truly gone. The Gnostics called this state the peace of the light, not a feeling, but a knowing. And perhaps this is why you feel drawn to these hidden teachings. Maybe your soul is nearing that point of remembrance. Maybe the unease you feel with the surface of the world is the sign that your second birth is approaching, the moment when the old illusion begins to crumble and your inner light begins to shine without fear. Before we move to the final revelation, tell me in the comments, do you believe your soul has been here before? Do you feel that deep, ancient knowing inside you, as if you've already lived this lesson once? Your experience matters, because every story of awakening helps another remember. All beings or symbolic forces, the message remains the same. You are more than the sum of your conditioning. Your awareness is the spark that the archons cannot imitate or control. Every act of inner silence, every moment you resist fear or manipulation, is a rebellion against their domain. So perhaps the real purpose of reincarnation is not to perfect the body or personality, but to refine awareness, to make consciousness strong enough to walk through illusion without being fooled by it. The Gnostics said that once a soul achieves this, it no longer returns. It becomes free, not because it earned heaven, but because it remembered it was heaven all along. Now think about this. How much of what you believe to be you has been placed there by the world, by family, by culture, by fear, and how much belongs to the eternal spark within? Every time you shed an identity that doesn't feel true, every time you listen to that silent voice that says, "I am," you are loosening the archon's chains. That is the essence of gnosis, not worship, but remembrance. Now that you've reached this point, take a breath, because what you've just heard is not just history nor philosophy. It's your story. From Sophia's fall to the archon's illusion, from the spark's descent to its awakening, the entire Gnostic revelation mirrors your own path through life, loss, and remembrance. The secret book of John is not a myth about gods and angels. It is the coded memory of your own consciousness. You are Sophia searching for wisdom, the divine spark lost in matter, the soul that has been born and reborn, each time carrying a little more light. If the Gnostics were right, you are not placed here by accident. You are part of the cosmic remedy, a thread of light sent into darkness, so that through you, divine wisdom might awaken again. Each lifetime you've lived, each sorrow and joy, has been preparing you for this moment, the moment of remembrance. And now, by simply listening to these hidden words, something ancient within you stirs. That sensation in your heart, that subtle recognition you can't explain, is the truth reawakening after centuries of sleep. You've heard this before, not with your ears, but with your soul. This is what the archons fear most, not rebellion, but awakening. Because when one soul remembers, others begin to remember too. The illusion starts to fracture. The system built on ignorance trembles. That is why knowledge, gnosis, was called the key to immortality. It's not about believing in another world. It's about seeing this world for what it truly is, a reflection, a shadow, a temporary dream designed to help you recall the eternal. Think of all the cycles you may have passed through, all the times you've been drawn to truth, to mystery, to the feeling that something greater calls you. None of that was random. Your life, this very one, may be the lifetime when remembrance completes itself. The moment when the spark within you finally says, I am not from here, I am light. And from that moment on, everything changes. You no longer live in fear of loss, because you see the eternal behind every face. You no longer crave endless answers, because you've become the question itself, alive, aware, awake. The Gnostics said that when a soul remembers, it does not escape the world, it illuminates it. It becomes a quiet flame that helps others see through the darkness. Perhaps that's why you were born again, not to repeat mistakes, but to serve as a mirror, reminding others of what they too have forgotten. The real reason you were born is to remember. The real reason you were born again is to awaken others. So now I invite you to carry this revelation with reverence. Do not let it fade into another passing thought. Let it settle in your heart like a secret seed. Question the world, yes, but more importantly, question your own forgetfulness. Each moment you choose awareness over distraction, you reclaim another fragment of Sophia's wisdom. Each act of love, of understanding, of truth, is a rebellion against the archon's dominion. If this message resonates with you, if you feel that strange sense of recognition in your chest, as though a door has opened inside you, then you are already walking the path of remembrance. Don't let it close. Subscribe to this channel and become part of a growing community of souls, rediscovering the light buried within ancient texts, forbidden stories, and the mystery of existence itself. By joining, you're not just following a channel, you're joining a lineage of seekers, keeping the forgotten truth alive. Tell me in the comments below, what do you think your soul came here to remember? What signs in your life have hinted that you've been here before? Your reflections might awaken someone else who's still lost in the illusion. And as you close this video, remember this truth whispered in the secret book of John. The light came into the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. You are that light. You are the memory that refuses to die. The question is, will you let it rise in you?